George Martin.
Senator Feingold.
George, good to see you.
Good to see you. On behalf of Peace Action Wisconsin, we want to thank you for your leadership in the Senate. In our 2006 congressional report card, you scored 89% in terms of voting for our positions around foreign policy, especially nuclear issues. Now, we're at a point in time right now where we're approaching the 4,000th death and the 5th anniversary of the war. And we urge you to work against any long-term military or economic agreements with Iraq. As we sit in this election year, we expect very little to be done around the war in Congress. At best, to be managed and to be of less concern. There's a great opportunity coming up with the Senate, a Iraq supplemental vote in March. We seek your leadership, even in a Senate where you don't have the votes to count. We urge you to filibuster against the Iraq supplemental vote. This would mandate national media coverage. It would help educate the American public as to the truth around this war. And you would not be alone. Peace Action Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice, nationally 38 state affiliates of Peace Action, and United for Peace and Justice, the U.S.'s largest anti-war coalition, which I co-chair, would mobilize and lobby on our respective congressional representatives. A few years ago, we mobilized the greatest grassroots lobby day in the history of the United States. Last January 26th, we read your letter endorsing our March on Congress. Again, we urge you to take this step to end the war, and we'll be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Despite the fact that I was working on the civil liberties bill this week, I had several tough moments this week when even Democratic senators were trying to get me to even drop my legislation that would have a timetable to get our troops out. So I am fighting that battle at this point. They want to do other things. They want to investigate Blackwater, which we should do. They want to make sure we have votes to not have permanent bases, which I support. But I don't want it to be an either-or kind of thing. I think we are going to have to use our procedural abilities, which, by the way, are much more limited than you think they are. This idea that somebody can actually do a filibuster anymore, all they got to do is file cloture, not call anything. It ain't Mr. Smith anymore. It just doesn't work like that anymore. And so there are things you can get enough people. If I'm not alone, as you say, which prove that to me, then we can do things. But one person actually cannot in the Senate anymore get very much done because of the way they develop the rules. They just file a cloture petition, they hold a vote, and then you're off your feet. But I will do everything I can, and I appreciate what you guys are doing because you're about the only ones that are still pushing as hard as people need to push to end this war. I understand State Senator Lena Taylor is here. Julie Enslow.
Thank you from me also for being a courageous, intelligent voice in D.C. in this country. I'm also one of these people who's very concerned about Bush remaining in office for another 11 months. I think a tremendous amount of damage can be done, and impeachment proceedings must begin. And one of those issues that could resolve from his remaining in office is an attack on Iran. And there is all kinds of rhetoric, of course, coming out of his administration about that issue. He has Bush has dismissed the December 3rd National Intelligence Estimate that stated that Iran basically is not a nuclear threat and stop its nuclear weapons program. There is a proposed legislation in the House that would require any kind of military action on Iran to have to be voted upon by Congress. Is there a similar kind of legislation being proposed in the Senate? And also, can you take some leadership in this with...
Well, Senator Durbin has proposed such a bill, but let me say something to you. The Constitution already requires this. If we try to pass a bill saying that we should have to do it, that they should have to do it, and it loses, that weakens our case. The Constitution says it clear as a bell. Since when do we have to pass a law saying we have the power to do something? So it really actually bothers me. although I understand how you feel about it. I think we are ready to resist a presidential attempt to pull off something in Iraq, but I'm very worried about it. And I do look forward to next year's listening session, where people will be asking me, are there any extra tickets to the inaugural parade? instead of, we gotta get this guy out of here. So, but you have raised a terribly important concern, and many of us are very alert, especially those that voted for the Iraq War, unlike me, are very alert to some of this Iran stuff this
We
time.
look forward to your leadership on that, Sam, to keep diplomacy out there on the
Absolutely.
table.
Yeah. John,